الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعد نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اقتفى أثره واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. Alhamdulillah, we're still in the book known as Al-Awsat في السنن والإجماع والاختلاف, the book entitled the Awsat, or that medium-sized book regarding the Sunan, the ahadith that deal with rulings, and the ijma', the consensus, and al-ikhtilaf, the disagreement, i.e. of the scholars, as authored by Abu Bakr Muhammad ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Mundhir, who died in the year 318 after the Hijrah. And we're in the section where the author is talking about dhikr al-wudu'i min al-nawm, that which has been mentioned regarding making wudu because of sleep. From the things that the author says the sunnah proves that it is obligatory to make wudu because of them is sleep. The author mentions this in the section that deals with the things that the sunnah proves it is obligatory to make, or the actions that the sunnah proves that it is obligatory to make wudu because of them. And from that which is neither consumed or expelled from the body is the affair of sleep. The affair of sleep. And we mentioned the two ahadith that are the foundation, or two of the ahadith that are the foundation of this discussion, that are necessary to be in the forefronts of our mind when we're reviewing this topic. And it is the hadith of Safwan ibn Asal, as it related to the wearing of the khufayn, that the Prophet ﷺ commanded them that they should wear their khifaf when traveling, and they should wipe over their khifaf when traveling. They should wipe over their khufs when traveling for the traveler 3 days and nights, and the resident has 1 night and day, or 1 day and night, and they should not remove them for defecation, urination, or sleep, but should only remove them because of janaba. And so this hadith, it shows us that sleep is one of those things that are similar to defecation and urination. And we mentioned the hadith likewise of Abi Hurairah رضي الله تعالى عنه, that he said that إذا استيقظ أحدكم من النوم فلا يغمس يده في الإناء حتى يغسله ثلاثا فإن أحدكم لا يدري أين باتت يده. When one of you wakes up from sleeping, then he should not stick his hand in the container until he washes it 3 times, because one of you does not know where his hand spent the night. And so we said that both of these narrations are foundations in this topic of the obligation of making wudu because of sleep. The first one, obviously, because of the comparison between, or the comparison made, or the joining together of defecation, urination, along with sleep. And so the ruling of sleep should be similar to the ruling of defecation and urination. And since you can wipe because on your hoofs because of defecation and because of urination, and the two of them are known to be things that nullify the wudu, then similarly sleep should be a nullifier. And we mentioned the statement of Ibn al-Mundhir that the nullification of sleep, according to this narration, should be equivalent or similar in whatever manner it is to the manner that urination and defecation nullify wudu. And so from that we extracted, or we deduced, or we understood that the smallest amount of sleep should be that which breaks wudu in its absolute unrestricted form. And we mentioned that this is a valid surmise on the author. The author surmised correctly in this regard, regarding that this is what the apparentness of the hadith suggests. As far as the hadith of Abi Hurairah, then the author, rahimahullah, he mentions that this was also general and unrestricted. That how the Prophet commanded us to wash our hands before sticking them into the container before we make wudu after sleeping. He says that the Prophet did not restrict what kind of sleep. And so therefore this shows that any kind of sleep breaks the wudu. But we said that an argument could be made that the actual point of reference is the sleep that an individual loses consciousness and is not aware of his surroundings, because sleep has different levels and different stages, as we'll talk about. So we mentioned that statement from the author that kind of explained his view on these two narrations and how the beginning position in this chapter, the beginning position is that sleep of any kind, no matter how small or how large or deep, no matter in what no matter in what position you sleep or what kind of situation you're sleeping in, then all of it nullifies wudu. The author, he goes on to say, وَقَدْ احْتَجَّ بَعْضُ مَنْ مَذْهَبُهُ إِيجَابَ الْوُضُوءِ أو من مذهبه إيجاب الوضوء على كل نائم أن قال لا يخلو النوم في نفسه من أن يكون حدثا ينقض الطهارة أو غير حدث. لا يخلو النوم في نفسه من أن يكون حدثا ينقض الطهارة أو غير حدث. فإن كان النوم حدثا كالغائط والبول فعلى النائم الوضوء على أي جهة كان النوم كسائر الأحداث، أو لا يكون النوم حدثا يوجب الوضوء فليس يجب على نائم الطهارة فليس يجب على نائم الطهارة فليس يجب على نائم الطهارة على أي جهة كان النوم منه حتى يكون معه حدث يوجب الوضوء. طيب, this is another rational argument that is being made, and similar to what has been stated, but he's explaining it more here. He says, some of those who make the argument according to the opinion that wudu is an obligation upon every individual who sleeps, i.e. in any fashion, some of the people who make that argument that wudu is obligatory upon anybody who sleeps in any fashion, they use as support the statement or their statement that sleep will either be itself something that is considered a hadith and it nullifies purification, or itself is not a hadith. Right? You're either going to say that sleep is something that breaks wudu, or sleep is not something that breaks wudu. He says, and therefore, if sleep is something that breaks wudu, like defecation or urination, then upon anyone who sleeps it is obligatory upon anyone who sleeps to make wudu. Regardless of what type of sleep that sleep was, it is considered a hadith. Or if you say that sleep is not a hadith that necessitates wudu, then it is not obligatory upon the sleeper to perform a purification, regardless of the condition of the sleep that he commits, or the type of sleep that he has, until it accompanies that sleep an actual hadith that necessitates purification. Like, these are a lot of words. What does he mean? The people who say that any kind of sleep, so you have to understand, right? There's multiple opinions about sleep. Is it sleep itself that breaks the hadith, or is sleep an action where breaking the hadith is likely to occur? Madhanna or madhanna, right? There are two opinions, two base opinions. Sleep itself is a hadith. Sleep itself nullifies purification. And the second opinion is that sleep itself is not the nullifier, but instead the nullifiers are more likely and are suspect to occur while sleep. It's a place where you think that a nullifier occurred. These are the two general opinions. And then inside of these, there are sub-opinions. So for example, the people who say that sleep itself is a nullifier, do they say that every type of sleep is a nullifier, or just certain types of sleep? And those that say that wudu is a place where, sleep is an action where it is thought or it is likely that a nullifier occurred, Do they say that you have to act according to what is likely or to what there is certainty in? Because as we know, certainty is not removed because of what is most likely or what is conjecture or what they call suspicion. And so these are the two base opinions. And so Ibn al-Mundhir, what he's saying here in this paragraph to support the argument of those who say that any kind of sleep breaks your wudu, he's saying you're either going to say sleep itself nullifies wudu. And if sleep itself nullifies wudu, then any kind of sleep nullifies wudu. It does not matter the quality, the quantity, the depth, the location, the position, the action that it is included as part of. If it's sleep, it broke your wudu because, according to this statement, sleep is what nullifies wudu. Just like urine nullifies wudu. So it doesn't matter if it's a drop or a bucket. If you urinate, you've broken your wudu. Just like defecation nullifies your wudu. It doesn't matter if it's a small bowel movement or a large bowel movement, it nullifies your wudu. So you're either going to say that is either going to be your position. So i.e. he's refuting those who try to say it's the depth of the sleep that nullifies the wudu. Or you're going to say sleep does not nullify your wudu. Sleep itself is not a nullifier. And if you're going to say that sleep itself is not the nullifier, then you can't force somebody to make wudu until a nullifier actually occurs. And so you can't tell somebody you have to make wudu because you slept, because maybe you nullified your wudu. We say no. If there is no nullifier or there is no knowledge of a nullifier, then you cannot force a person to say they have to remake wudu. And so if sleep isn't the hadith, then you can't compel somebody to remake wudu. And like this, he's refuting those of them who say that sleep isn't a hadith, but it's a place where a hadith is likely to occur, and therefore you have to make wudu. So he's refuting those who differentiate on both sides. And this statement is made to support the argument of those that say any amount of sleep is a hadith. Now, he goes on, he says, وَاحْتَجَّ بِحُجَّةٍ أُخْرَى, and they use another evidence as well. So far we have the two hadith that he mentioned. In his view, they are both absolute as it relates to the type of sleep. And then he mentioned his logic regarding those two hadith, how they're both absolute. And then he mentioned another reasonable or rational argument, which is that sleep is the hadith, and so therefore any kind of sleep must be what nullifies the wudu, the tahara. Then he says, وَاحْتَجَّ بِحُجَّةٍ أُخْرَى وَهُوَ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْعِلْمَ أو أن أهل العلم مجمعون على إيجاب الوضوء على من زال عقله بجنون أو أغمي بمرض إذا أفاق على أي حال كان ذلك منه. قال فكذلك النائم عليه ما عليه المغمى عليه لأنه زال عقل، لأنه زائل العقل، مع أن الأخبار مستغنى بها عن كل قول. نعم. He says there's another evidence that we use, and this is now an evidence of qiyas. So we had the athar, or should we say the hadith of Safwan, the hadith of Abi Hurairah in the author's view, absolute, right? Any kind of sleep. Then we had the logic, right? The reasoning, the nadhar, which is that you either have to say sleep is a hadith or not. And if you say sleep is a hadith, then it's any kind of sleep. And then he says there's another argument that can support, or another evidence that can support his argument. And now he's going to use qiyas, comparison. The comparison is if a person loses their intellect, right? They lose their faculties of reason. Let's read what he says. وَهُوَ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْعِلْمِ, the people of knowledge are unanimous in their agreement. There is a consensus. There is an ijma'. Right? If you're writing down, I usually, like in this book, I like to write down or underline where he mentions there is an ijma'. And then you can go back and compare it to his book that was written specifically in that topic, Al-Ijma', to kind of fill in whatever he might have left off or complete the picture of what he states that there's a consensus in. So he is saying that there is a consensus in or amongst the people of knowledge regarding the obligation of wudu upon the person who has lost his intellect due to insanity or being comatose because of a sickness upon awaking, regardless of whatever circumstance that happened or whatever the case was or how that happened. So if a person loses consciousness and goes comatose, regardless if he was in a coma for a minute or a year, when he wakes up, he has to make wudu. And likewise, the person who lost their sanity, right? They become majnoon, they go insane. And sometimes people have bouts of insanity that come and go, where they sometimes regain their faculties and their ability to reason, and at other moments lose it. And so this person, whether he lost it for a moment or for a year, or he has to make wudu when he regains sanity, to regain purification or to regain his purity. And this is something that the author is stating that there is unanimous agreement amongst the scholars. There is a ijma'. There is a consensus regarding this. Regardless of how long, how short, how deep, regardless of the cause, the effect, if this happens, he says, قَالَ كَذَلِكَ النَّائِمُ. And so if this is the case about the one who loses his intellect because of insanity or because of a coma, then likewise is the condition of the one who falls asleep. Upon him is that which is upon the one who has gone comatose, who has gone unconscious, because both of them have lost their aql. Both of them have lost their faculty of reasoning, their ability to comprehend and understand and to be conscious of what's happening. So that loss of consciousness is what removed the intellect. He says, Ma anna al-ikhbar, and this is in spite of the fact that the narrations make us not in need of all of this reasoning. Meaning the two hadith, in his view, the two hadith that I've given you suffice regarding us not needing all of this reasoning. I don't need to do qiyas because I have a text. I have the hadith of Safwan ibn Asad, right? That's clear. I don't need to do nadhr and ijtihad because I have a text. I've given you the hadith of Abi Hurairah. That's enough. هذا مع أن الأخبار مستغنى بها عن كل قول. We don't need anybody else's statement. All of the reasoning and the logic and the comparison, we don't actually need it because we have the hadith to support us. وفعلا, I know it might seem like there is a different view being adopted than the view of Ibn al-Mundhir, but in reality, I think it's the similar view. And that is, if a person loses consciousness, they have to make wudu. The question is consciousness lost in all modes of sleeping? And this is where there might be some differing, because when we say sleep, there is a nap, there is a drowsiness, there's dozing off, there's slumber, there's deep sleep, in medical terms, there's REM sleep, non-REM sleep, etc. And so some of us might find ourselves in situations where somebody might use the word, even in Arabic especially, because the realities are connected to the words. And these words aren't defined the way us here, especially in modern days, especially in the West, because of the influences of philosophy and things like that, like to put definitions and labels on everything. The word sleep is an absolute term. There are different realities of it. And so when a person is dozing off, are they asleep? Right? You'll see somebody dozing off and say, hey, Ak, why are you sleeping? We still got to pray Isha. And that person, I wasn't sleeping. You say, yes, you was, Ak. Right? I remember my father used to be abundant in this, right? They have that like narcolepsy, or they drowsy. The people who do various drugs lose their intellect. They get the nods and things like this. And so when is it considered sleep? And if we're going to compare it to insanity or to unconsciousness, then to me, this supports the view that I mentioned from Abu Hurairah, which is if the sleep leads to a loss of consciousness. فَإِنَّ أَحَدِكُمْ لَا يَدْرِي أَيْنَ بَاتَتْ يَدُهُ. This is what I adopt in this view, because the loss of consciousness is when an individual has nullified their wudu, comparatively to the insane, comparatively to the person in a coma or who ends up unconscious because of a sickness. And so those things for me line up. But the apparentness of what Ibn al-Mundhir is saying here, especially when you consider how he mentioned the explanation of the hadith, he is saying any of these sleeps. The sleep where you're still conscious and you still kind of can hear people talking, but you're asleep, no, that's still sleep. It nullifies your wudu. And that's what he means when he says the narrations make us not in need of any of these comparisons and analogies. They make us not in need of the statement of anybody else. After mentioning that first opinion, he goes into mentioning the other hadith that we said was an important hadith in this chapter. So we have the hadith of Safwan ibn Asal regarding not taking off your khuf because of urination, defecation, or sleep, and how all of them are the same. We have the hadith of Abi Hurairah about washing your hands before you put them in the container after sleeping before making wudu because you don't know where your hands spent the night. Now he says, وَقَدْ احْتَجَّ بَعْضُهُمْ بظاهر حديث علي بن أبي طالب ومعاوية بن أبي سفيان عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال إنما العين وكاء السه فمن نام فليتوضأ. Now this hadith, it's competed, or should we say both parties, both opinions, those who say that sleep itself is a hadith, or those that say that sleep is a place where a hadith likely occurs, both of them fight over this hadith, right? Both of them claim that this hadith supports their argument, similar to the hadith of don't go down the way the camel goes down. Those who go down on their knees first and those who go down on their hands first, they both claim this hadith for themselves. They both say that this is our hadith. So what is this hadith? He says some of them, i.e. some of the people who say that any kind of sleep breaks wudu, some of them use the apparentness of the hadith of Ali ibn Abi Talib, as well as the one of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, on the authority of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he said, indeed the eye is the wika as-sah, right? The eye is that which is the covering of the anus, right? The eye is the wika, it's the covering, it's the seal of the anus. So whoever sleeps, then he must make wudu. Whoever sleeps, then he must make wudu. Right? This hadith, you see, it's a strong evidence for those that say any kind of sleep breaks your wudu. Because the Prophet said whoever sleeps must make wudu. While the other side says no, he mentioned the logic or the reason, the hikmah, the illah behind why you make wudu, and it is because the eye is the cover of the anus. And for that reason, when the cover is undone, then stuff comes out, right? As it'll be mentioned in some of the narration, when the cover is opened or removed, then it comes out of the anus that which is going to come. And so some of them say, no, it's not the sleep that breaks the wudu, but it's the things that happen while you're asleep, that your eye is no longer able to recognize and pinpoint. And so it's a place where these things likely occur. I don't know if all of this is clear, but inshallah. So, as we said, the apparentness the author is saying here of this hadith of Ali and Muawiyah is clarifying what he is going towards in this topic or in this point of any kind of sleep. Because the second half of the hadith says, whoever sleeps, هذا عام, this is a general statement, then he must. فَلْيَتَوَضَّأ, هذا أمر, this is a command, then he must make wudu. After mentioning the narration, he mentions his chain. He says, حدثنا علي بن الحسن قال حدثنا إسحاق قال حدثنا بقية بن الوليد قال حدثنا الوضين بن عطاء عن محفوظ بن علقمة عن عبد الرحمن بن عائذ عن علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله تعالى عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال إنما العين وكاء السه فمن نام فليتوضأ. He says that Ali ibn al-Hasan narrated to us. He said that Ishaq narrated to us. He said that Baqiyat ibn al-Walid narrated to us. He said that Al-Wadin ibn Ata narrated to us on the authority of Mahfuz ibn Alqama, on the authority of Abdul Rahman ibn A'id, on the authority of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, on the authority of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he said, indeed, the eye is the seal of the anus. So whoever sleeps, then he must make wudu. Whoever sleeps, then they must make wudu. Abu Bakr says, قال حدثنا علي عن أبي عبيد قوله السه يعني حلقة الدبر والوكاء أصله الخيط أو السير أو السير الذي يشد به رأس القربة فجعل اليقظة للعين مثل الوكاء للقربة يقول في إذا نامت العين استطلق ذلك الوكاء فكان منه الحدث. Here, these words, obviously in the translation, we get the translation, alhamdulillah, we have that benefit. But these words in Arabic are somewhat difficult, somewhat uncommon. And alhamdulillah, from the author's benefit to us, he explains these words. He says that Ali narrated to us on the authority of Abi Ubaid. Abi Ubaid huwa Abu Ubaid al-Qasim ibn Salam. Abu Ubaid al-Qasim ibn Salam, who died in the year 233. He died in the year 233, if I'm not mistaken. Abu Ubaid al-Qasim ibn Salam. Abu Ubaid al-Qasim ibn Salam was a contemporary of Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah, and from those scholars of hadith who were known for their understanding of the language. They were known for their understanding of the language. And he's written many books in hadith. He's written many books in hadith. Abu Ubaid al-Qasim ibn Salam, he died in the year 224. He died in the year 224. 233, I want to say, is Ishaq ibn Rahuya. He died in 224. Abu Ubaid al-Qasim ibn Salam, he died in the year 224. He was a scholar of hadith who was very well known for his understanding of the gharib, the strange Arabic words that come in the hadith. He wrote many books and narrations like Tahara, Kitab al-Tahara, or Tahur, Kitab al-Tahur li Abi Ubaid. He wrote Kitab al-Iman. He has a book in Iman. And other than that, Gharib al-Quran. No, that's Abu Ubaid. But Abu Ubaid al-Qasim ibn Salam was a scholar of hadith, and he's mentioned in Bukhari, in the explanation of a word. I believe one time in Bukhari in the explanation of a word, and he was known for his ability to clarify the language. Abu Bakr ibn al-Mundhir, he says that Ali narrated to us on the authority of Abi Ubaid, this Abi Ubaid al-Qasim ibn Salam. He said the statement of the Prophet, as-sah, what he means by that is the butthole, halaqat ad-dubr, right, the ring of the anus, right, the butthole. Wal-wika, or al-wika, the origin of its meaning is a thread, a khayt, or a rope, or something that is used to tie the top of a qurba. And a qurba is that drinking vessel, right? That water skin or something like that. If you think about a leather water satchel and how on the top of it you would wrap the string around it to seal it off, then this wika originally is that thread that would be used to seal and keep the water vessel or the water skin closed. Abu Ubaid, he says, so the Prophet made consciousness, al-yaqadha, he made being awoke and consciousness, focus of the eye similar to the string of the water skin. So he's saying when the eye sleeps, then that string is undone. And it will happen because of that, things that nullify your purification. It will happen because of that, things that nullify your purification. Now, he wrote Gharib al-Hadith, not Gharib al-Quran, Gharib al-Hadith. And this is where you can find that statement of his at. Istarqa, yani istatlaka istarqa. Right? When the string is undone, when the string is loosened, then from here, hadith occurs. Right? So he's saying that the word as-sah, innama al-ainu wika as-sah, that the word as-sah, what is meant by it is the anus, the butthole. And al-wika is the string originally. It's the thread or the string that is used to tie off the drinking vessel, the water skin, the qurba. And the Prophet is making consciousness of the eye similar to the string of this drinking vessel. And so when the eye sleeps, this string is loosened. And like this, the hadith occurs. Now that we've understand the statement of Abu Ubaid and his explanation of this hadith, Abu Bakr goes on after. So we've mentioned the first view. And that first view is apparently the view that Abu Bakr is adopting, because he mentioned it in the things that the Sunnah proves, and he mentioned all the evidence for it, independent before getting into the disagreement. And like we say, this is one of the first places that he mentions the disagreement inside of a topic that he said the Sunnah proved it, where there was almost unanimous agreement in. Here he's going to mention the disagreement in this issue, right? We had something similar to it in camel meat, but now it's even more detailed. So after mentioning what he believes to be the stronger opinion, what is it once again? That all sleep nullifies wudu. He mentioned 3 hadith, the apparentness of all 3 of these hadith. He mentioned the comparison between sleep, urination, and defecation in the hadith of Safwan. He mentioned the comparison of sleep to unconsciousness, or being unconscious or comatose or being insane. And he mentioned that sleep itself is either the hadith or not. And so if you say sleep is the hadith, then it doesn't matter what kind. Now that we've understood all of that and what is adopted by him as the stronger view, that no matter what kind of sleep, he says, قال أبو بكر وقد اختلف أهل العلم وافترقوا في الوضوء من النوم 6 فرق. Indeed, the people of knowledge have differed and have split up as it relates to making wudu because of sleep into 6 different groups. There are 6 different views as it relates to, do you have to make wudu because of sleep? There are 6 different views as it relates to, do you have to make wudu because of sleep? And this is one of the reasons why I love this book, because it's a comparative book of Islamic law, of a Sharia, but in the early generations, like late enough to be after the 4 madhahib, but early enough to still have the presence of the other madhahib. So it's not as if all of the other madhahib had vanished by this point in time and the knowledge was lost, and you only have the opinions of the 4 imams, as you see in a lot of the books of comparative fiqh in the later generations. These were all valid opinions of the Salaf. These were all valid opinions of the Salaf. And these opinions, not only does he mention them in a simple mentioning, saying that they held this view or they held that view, but he also presents it with the chain, so we feel comfortable and connected to the validity of these statements. So he says that the scholars have differed into 6 groups, and we want to try to get through some of these groups today, so that we don't have as much left next time, because this chapter We still have almost 8 pages of this chapter are still left. So let's try to get through at least the first 3 groups, or maybe the first 2, if not just the first one. So the first opinion. So now we have what he deems is the stronger opinion. Any sleep. Type. Now that he's mentioned it, don't be confused if he repeats it. But he's mentioned that sleep breaks wudu. Type. What is the view of the scholars in this issue? What is the view of the scholars in this issue? He says, فقالت فرقة بظاهر هذه الأخبار فأوجبت الوضوء على كل نائم روينا عن أبي هريرة أنه قال من استحق النوم فعليه الوضوء. خلاص. He says, so a group of them say, these 6 different opinions, one group says a statement that is in accordance with the apparentness of these narrations. One group has a statement that is in accordance with the apparentness of these narrations, i.e., the opinion that he's already adopted, it would seem. There's the first group are those that say according to the apparentness of these narrations, and that is that they make wudu obligatory upon anyone who sleeps. Upon every sleeper. Everybody who sleeps has to make wudu. He says it has been related to us on the authority of Abi Hurairah that he said, whoever truly sleeps, then he must make wudu. Whoever truly sleeps, then upon him is wudu. Right, this is the statement. He says, وَرُوِينَا عَنْ أَنَسِ بْنِ مَالِكٍ أَنَّهُ قَالَ إِذَا وَجَدَ الرَّجُلُ طَعْمَ النَّوْمِ جَالِسًا كَانَ أَوْ غَيْرِهِ فَعَلَيْهِ الْوُضُوء. He says, and we've been reported to about Anas ibn Malik, that he says, whenever a person finds the taste of sleep, right, he gets a good taste of sleep, whether he is sitting or other than that, then upon him is to make wudu. Then it is incumbent upon him to make wudu. He says, وَرُوِينَ عَنِ ابْنِ عَبَّاسِ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى عَنْهُمَا, that he said, وَجَبَ الْوُضُوء عَلَى كُلِّ نَائِمٍ إِلَّا مَنْ خَفِقَ بِرَأْسِهِ خَفْقَةً. He said that, and we've been reported to on the authority of Ibn Abbas, that it has been reported to us on the authority of Ibn Abbas, that he said, it is obligatory to make wudu upon everyone who sleeps, unless the person خَفِقَ بِرَأْسِهِ خَفْقَةً, unless the person just drops his head for a moment, right? Al-khafqa, yani hakada. Like when you're dozing off and you regain consciousness like that, then Ibn Abbas is saying this person does not have to. The person who is dozing off like that and dropping his head and popping back up, then this person does not, this sleep does not necessitate it. This is the statement of Ibn Abbas. After that, he mentions the narrations that support, or the chains that support these statements that he has mentioned. Before doing that, I do want to point out something. We said a second ago, it might seem like I'm supporting a position other than what Ibn al-Mundhir has asserted. And if I was, that's no problem, right? We follow the evidence. But I want to make it clear that I don't even necessarily think it's the case. Because when we look at these statements that Ibn al-Mundhir is mentioning here, man istahaqqa an-nawm, whoever truly sleeps. Man wajada ta'am an-nawm, whoever gets a taste of sleep. Whoever sleeps except the one who is yani khafiqa bi ra'sihi khafqa. We notice a theme there that the sleep it is possible that it be said that the sleep that is being referenced there is the sleep where one completely loses consciousness. The sleep where one completely loses consciousness. And you can lose, and then the argument becomes, can you lose consciousness while sitting? Because, for example, a person might argue, if you're sitting in a chair and you lose consciousness, you should fall out of the chair. If you're standing and you lose consciousness, you should fall down because your body relaxes and gives up the tension that is keeping you erect. So if you're sleeping and you're truly asleep, you should fall down. Your body should sprawl out. Just like if a person got knocked unconscious, their body would sprawl out. They would lose control of their limbs. They wouldn't be able to hold on to a pencil. They wouldn't be able to sit upright. Yes, maybe something could be propping them up or forcing them to sit upright, and then that is true. They would lose consciousness. But generally speaking, if you're holding yourself upright and you fall asleep, you should fall over. And so the question becomes, who truly experiences sleep? The one who truly experiences sleep is the one who has lost consciousness and has lost control of himself. Who has found the taste of sleep? The one who gets the flavor and the good enjoyment, the ta'am, they get the sweetness of sleep. Then that isn't the person who is dozing. That's the person who actually sprawls out. And the one who is dozing, even though it might be said that he is sleeping, he's nodding off, right? That sleep isn't the sleep that has removed his consciousness in totality by the evidence that when he drops his head, he pops it back up. And so it is possible to carry these narrations that the author is using in support of any type of sleep to that sleep being the deep sleep. But it's arguable on the other side to say, no, the author says, mentioning from Ibn Abbas, kulli na'im. Mentioning from Ibn Abbas, mentioning from Anas ibn Malik, kulli na'im. Mentioning from Abi Hurairah, kulli na'im. Oh no, Abu Hurairah doesn't mention kulli na'im. But Ibn Abbas and Anas, they mention every sleeper. And one might say that man istahaq an-nawm, whoever actually sleeps, not i.e. who actually gets deep sleep, but whoever is said about him that he's sleeping. Man istahaq an-nawm. And it could be said about Anas, whoever tastes sleep, i.e. whoever tastes any amount of it, whether he gets a good bite or a small bite, right? So these phrases can be adopted either way. And that's why you see that there's disagreement still in existence about this topic. But the first opinion is any amount of sleep. The author now, we're going to mention what he mentions from his chains back to Abi Hurairah and Anas and Ibn Abbas. He says first regarding the statement of Ibn Abbas, حدثنا علي بن الحسن قال حدثنا عبد الله قال أخبرني سفيان قال حدثني يزيد بن أبي زياد أن مقسم مقسم عن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما أنه قال وجب الوضوء على كل نائم إلا من خفق برأسه خفقة. The author, he says that Ali ibn al-Hasan narrated to us. He said that Abdullah narrated to us. He said that Sufyan informed me. He said that Yazid ibn Abi Ziyad narrated to me on the authority of Miqsam. Miqsam, with a kasra in the beginning, is Ibn Bujrah, Miqsam. And a dhamma is on the letter ba in the word Bujrah. And it has a sukoon on the jim, Bujrah. Miqsam ibn Bujrah. وَيُقَالُ نَجْدَ. It's also said that his name is Miqsam ibn Najda, with a fatha on the noon and with a dal instead of the ra. And this is important, right? I'm reading this because, like, when you come across a name, it's important to see how the Salaf used to pinpoint them. Miqsam, with the kasra on the beginning of it. Bi kasri awwalihi. So you can know that it is a kasra, because, and we don't have time to do it here, and I wish we had the ability to do these things with everyone, and I think everyone should do them. Look at how they used to write Arabic, right? The way your mushaf is written, the handwriting style, this Kufic style that we write with, it wasn't the way they used to write. Look at the handwriting style known as Al-Hijazi, right? You'll see that it's different. The ra looks like a dal. The dal looks like almost a kaf. And the kaf looked like the dal. You'll see comparisons in letters, and the letters look so different. And so when you start talking about how the Salaf would have been precise in pinpointing these things, even though this book is written later, when the Kufic handwriting style might have been more prominent, it's important to know that they put a lot of effort into pinpointing how to say people's names. And so when you're reading about biographies, you need to understand what they're saying and why they're saying it. Miqsam, with the kesra in the beginning, i.e. kesra on the meme. So it's not muqsim or muqassim or maqsam. It's miq with a kesra in the beginning. And then once you know that, you know the scale is mif'al, right? Like ism ala, mif'al, right? Then he says, and his last name is Ibn Bujra. His father's name is Ibn Bujra. And that's a word that can be confusing. There weren't dots early on. So is it noon? Is it ta? Is it ya? Is it tha? Is it ba? He says, bi dhamm al-muwahhada. With a dhamma on the one with one dot. Right? Out of all of those letters, ba is the only one that has the one dot on the bottom. Right? So it says with the ba on the one with one dot and a sukoon on the jeen. And it is also said that his name, i.e. the father's name, was Najda, with the fatha on the noon and with a dal, i.e. instead of a ra. His kunya was Abul Qasim, yani Miqsam. His kunya was Abul Qasim, and he was the freed slave of Abdullah ibn al-Harith. And it is also said that he was the freed slave of Ibn Abbas. Liluzumihi lah, because of how much he stuck and clung to Ibn Abbas. Right? He was from the students of Ibn Abbas. Saduq, he was honest. Wakana yursil, and he would narrate hadith on the Prophet directly without mentioning who he heard it from. Min al-Rabi'ah, i.e. he's from the earlier tabi'een, right? Or you can say from the mutawassit. But from the earlier mutawassit of the tabi'een, he died in the year 101. Mata sanata ihda wa mi'a. Wa ma lahu fil Bukhari siwa hadithun wahid. And he only has one hadith in Sahih Bukhari. So I wanted to get that because I was unsure of how to pronounce his name, but his name is Miqsam. And then I could have just looked at the print and saw that they wrote a kesra there. But I wasn't even noticing the harakat. He says that Ali ibn al-Hasan narrated to us. He said that Abdullah narrated to us. He said that Sufyan informed me. He said that Yazid ibn Abi Ziyad narrated to me on the authority of Miqsam, on the authority of Ibn Abbas, that he said, Ibn Abbas said, wudu is wajib upon everyone who sleeps, except the one who khafiqa bi ra'sihi khafqa, illa man khafiqa bi ra'sihi khafqa, except the one who drops his head a dropping, right? A small dropping. Naam. So that's the narration. He says, حدثنا علي بن عبد العزيز قال حدثنا حجاج قال حدثنا حماد عن سعيد بن الجريري عن خالد بن غلاق عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه نعم عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه إذا استحق أحدكم النوم أو إذا استحق أحدكم نوما فليتوضأ. He says that, subhanallah, excuse me for 1 second. No, subhanallah. He says that, subhanallah. He says that Ali ibn Abdul Aziz narrated to us on the authority of Hajjaj, on the authority of Hamad, on the authority of Sa'id al-Jurayri. It's backing up. He says that Ali ibn Abdul Aziz narrated to us on the authority of Hajjaj, on the authority of Hamad, on the authority of Sa'id al-Jurayri, on the authority of Khalid ibn Ghallaq, on the authority of Abi Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, or radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that he said, when one of you truly sleeps, or when one of you actually sleeps or reaches sleep, then he must make wudu. He says, that's the narration we mentioned. He says, حدثنا إسحاق and Abdul Razzaq and Ja'far ibn Sulaiman wa ghayri. and Sa'id al-Jurayri and Hilal al-Absi and Abi Hurayrah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu أنه قال من استحق النوم فعليه الوضوء. He mentions it also from another path on Sa'id al-Jurayri. He says that Ishaq narrated to us on the authority of Abdul Razzaq, on the authority of Ja'far ibn Sulaiman and other than him, on the authority of Sa'id al-Jurayri, on the authority of Hilal al-Absi, on the authority of Abi Hurayrah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that he said, whoever sleeps, whoever actually sleeps, then upon him is wudu. He says, حدثنا موسى بن هارون قال حدثنا شريح بن يونس قال حدثنا أبو معاوية عن عاصم عن أنس رضي الله تعالى عنه أنه قال إذا وجد الرجل طعم النوم جالسا كان أو غير ذلك فعليه الوضوء. He says that Musa ibn Harun narrated to us on the authority. He says that Shurayh narrated to us, Shurayh ibn Yunus narrated to us. He says that Abu Muawiyah narrated to us on the authority of Asim, on the authority of Anas, that he said if a man or if one of you or if a person taste sleep sitting or other than that, then he must make wudu. To finish off, after mentioning the Sahaba who held this opinion, he says, قال أبو بكر وكان الحسن البصري يقول إذا خالط النوم قلب أحدكم فليتوضأ. He says that Hasan al-Basri, he used to say, when the sleep mixes with the heart of any one of you, then he must make wudu. Right? When sleep mixes with the heart of any one of you, then he must make wudu. وكذلك قال سعيد بن المسيب. And likewise, this was said by Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib and Abu Rafi'. وقال عطاء بن أبي رباح إذا ملكك النوم فتوضأ قاعدا أو مضطجعا. He says that this was also the statement of Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib and Abu Rafi', and likewise Ata ibn Abi Rabah. He said, if sleep takes over your heart, if sleep takes you over, then make wudu. If sleep takes control of you, either malakaka an-nawm. If sleep overpowers you or becomes your king, if it takes over you, then perform wudu, whether you were sitting or laying down. Right? He says, وَرُوِينَا أَنْ عَطَاء وَطَاوُوسْ وَمُجَاهِدْ أَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا مَنْ نَامَ رَاكِئًا أَوْ سَاجِدًا فَلْيَتَوَضَّأ. He says, likewise, it has been reported to us on the authority of Ata, and here the Ata is, I want to say it's Ibn Abi Rabah as well, the same one, as well as Tawus and Mujahid, that all of them said, whoever sleeps, whether they are bowing or making sujood, then they must perform wudu. He says, وَقَالَ إِسْحَاقَ كُلَّمَا نَامَ حَتَّى غَلَبَهُ عَلَى عَقْلِهِ تَوَضَّأ. وَبِهِ قَالَ الْقَاسِمِ ibn Salam. Right? كُلَّمَا, it should be كُلَّمَنْ نَامَ حَتَّى. That should be كُلَّمَنْ. Now, he says that, likewise, it was reported on the authority of Ishaq. He said that whoever sleeps until it overpowers his consciousness or his intellect, then he must make wudu. And this was also the statement of Al-Qasim ibn Salam. Right, so he mentions all of these people to show us who adopted this first opinion. And the reality is that Allah knows best, this is the strongest of the opinions, that when you sleep, whether you're sleeping, standing, sitting, laying down, if you are truly asleep, then it has broken your wudu. If you've experienced the depth of sleep, if you experience the reality of sleep, if you are truly asleep, then it has broken your wudu. The argument is a person truly asleep if they are sitting up on their own or standing up on their own? Can you truly sleep in that state? That's the argument that is left. But Allah knows best, without a doubt, this first opinion, that if you are asleep, whether you are making a ruku' or sujood, as we're going to see some people exclude those things. How can you make a ruku' and still be asleep? You would have fell on your face. The point is, if you are actually asleep in those situations, then wudu is broken, because true sleep breaks your wudu. And this is the first opinion, that any sleep breaks your wudu. Any sleep. Inshallah, next time, he mentioned this to be the opinion of Hasan al-Basri and Sa'id ibn Musayyib and Ata ibn Abi Rabah and Tawus and Mujahid and Al-Qasim ibn Salam. And like we said, this is also the view that he himself has adopted, apparently. It seems that this is the view that he has adopted. Inshallah, next time we'll pick up with the second opinion out of the six. The second opinion out of the six. And it is the opinion of Malik and was also adopted by Zuhri and Rabi'at al-Ra'i, as we'll see. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.